Hello, everyone. My objective is to create a storage account and create a blob file storage, as well as have be able to access that storage account from the public, as well as within a VM using a private endpoint. I'm going to create a resource group. I'm going to call it storage RSG. I'm going to click review and create because I don't care about the tags. I can see it's already created. I'm going to create a VNet. I'm going to call it storage VNet. I'm going to keep all the settings defaults for the security. For the IP, I'm going to keep the IP here default, and I'm just going to move this to -24 to shrink the range since I'm not having any other subnets. And I'm going to go to review and create. And in a few seconds, it should be deployed. So now I'm going to create a storage account. I'm going to select the resource group I just created, storage RSG. I'm going to call the storage account mark storage. You can see the name's already taken. So if I call it 001 as well at the end, it's available. So I'm guessing that this is like they share a common name across the entire Azure environment. So if you have one storage name, somebody else has a storage name called Mark, you can't have that storage name again. You have to call it something different. For primary service, I'm going to collect Azure Blob. And for redundancy, I'm going to select locally redundant storage. So locally redundant storage, they create a couple of backups within that local data center that you have. The geo-redundant storage is a backup between two data centers in two different zones. So if I have one in Canada Central and one in Canada East, it'll create a backup in both of those. Zone redundant storage. So if a region has more than one data center, it will create a backup in more than one data center. So say if there was a data center in Toronto and there was a data center in Ottawa, it'll create a copy in both of those zones. Unfortunately, we don't have a data center in Ottawa, and this geo zone redundant storage will create a backup in both data centers that's within that region, as well as two different regions. So if I had one in Canada Central and one in Canada East. I have here another link that shows the different data centers. So if you can see here in Canada, we have Canada East, which is located in Quebec City. We have Canada Central, which is located in Toronto. And for the US is a good example. So they have US East US East US 2 and East US 3. So East US is located in Virginia. East US 2 is also located in Virginia. So this is between either Richmond or Boyton. And they have this one, which is grayed out, which is coming soon. That's in going to be in Georgia, Atlanta. So for me, I'm just going to select locally redundant storage. I'm going to leave the advanced settings by default. That's going to be default. Networking. I'm going to disable public access for now. And I'm just going to leave all the settings as defaults. So it should take a minute or so to deploy, or it should be really quick. So it just got deployed. So I'm going to go to the resource and you can see the storage account I just created. I'm going to set the public network interface to be publicly accessible. So I'm going to select networking, and under firewalls and virtual networks, I'm going to select under public networks, enable from all networks. Technically, you'd want to enable from selected virtual networks and IP address, and just select the IP addresses you want to be able to access your storage account. I'm going to click Save here. Azure provides different services. So there's containers, which store blob data, file shares, which you just upload your files to file share, which is the most common one that you have, like if it's similar to your Windows desktop. There's queues, which are used for messaging, and tables, similar for if you're going to use with your database. Now I'm going to add an access control for the blob. So you could see my roles. If I click view my access, it should say I'm an owner. So see here, I'm currently an owner, as well as user administrator. So if I go to roles and assignments, you could see my two roles here. I'm gonna select roles, and I'm gonna add a role. So they have different types of permissions. So for storage blob data contributor, it allows you for read, write, and delete access to Azure storage blob containers and data. Owner allows for full access to Azure storage blob containers and data, including assigned POSIX access and control access control. Storage blob data reader allows for read access to Azure storage blob containers and data. And storage blob delegator allows for generation of user delegation key, which can be used to sign SAS tokens. So I'm going to add myself to storage blob data contributor. Since I'm already an owner, and click next. I'm going to select the user that has access, so that's myself. And I'm going to click review and assign. So if I click here, you can see I have storage contributor as well. Now I'm going to create blob containers. I'm going to call this one region 1. And I'm going to call this one, second one, region 2. And if I click this one, I could choose to upload a file. So if I select the file, you can see here there's a URL for the file. And I could also click edit, and the file just says test in it. So I'm going to go to the file share. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to call this one data. So if I select browse, the file share. Oh, yeah, I'm already in the file share. Sorry. If I click upload, I will be able to upload a file. Now I'm going to create a SAS key. It's also known as shared access signature. So I'm just going to select all the different resource types. And this SAS key will be available from this time and date. So from 10:17 a.m. today until 6:17 p.m. tonight. Then this SAS key will no longer be good. So I'm going to click generate SAS and connection string. So you'll see here, it gives a bunch of different connection strings, one for the blub endpoint. If I go a little bit lower, there's one for the queue endpoint, one for the file endpoint, and one for the table endpoint. This one's the SAS token. Then there's the one for each different service separately. So I'm just going to copy this one somewhere and save it for when I actually need it. Now I'm going to connect to the blob container and the file storage from the public network. So this one is going to be the blob. container. So you can see my test here. This is the URL for the blob. And this one is the SAS token, SAS key. And this one is the file storage. And you can see the test came up, and you can see here in the URL it says file.core. So that's the file storage. Now I'm going to create a virtual machine. I'm going to put in the storage resource group. I'm going to call the virtual machine storage VM. And for the availability zone, I'm going to set it to no structure redundancy required. I'm going to select the Windows Server 2022 data center image and leave it at standard DS1 v2 with one CPU. I'm going to set the username to Mark and enter my username my password. I'm going to leave the disks as default. Networking, I'm just making sure the correct VNet was selected because there might be a second one. And I'm going to leave the public IP. So it's going to create a new storage VM IP for the RDP connection. So now I'm going to click select review and create. And it should take hopefully a minute or two to create the virtual machine. So now I'm going to go to the virtual machine. I'm going to select connect. And I'm going to select the RDP file. I already had one from before for different virtual machines, so it has the dash one on it. So I'm going to select this file. So now I'm going to log on to the virtual machine. So you can see that I'm able to access this URL because it's in the public. That one was the blob storage. You can see here where it says blob. And similar for here, this is the file storage. So I'm going to the storage account I created, and under network and security, I'm going to select networking, and I'm going to select disabled and save. So now I'm going to go back to the blob and refresh, and you'll see I got a authorization failure. Same if I go to the file URL, I'm going to get a authorization failure again. So now I'm going to create a private endpoint connection. So the resource group's correct. I'm going to call this Mark Storage 001, and this one's for blob, private endpoint, because you can't have the same names. For resource, I'm going to select blob. I'm going to go to virtual network. So it's the correct virtual network and the default subnet, and it's going to dynamically allocate the IP address. So whatever my virtual machine is, I could tell you what the IP is. So you can see the IP address is 10.0.0.4. So the blob storage account would be 10.0.0.5. And when I create the file one, it would be 10.0.0.6. I'm just going to leave the defaults. And now I'm going to create the private endpoint. Now my private endpoint for the blob storage is created. I'm just going to close this off. So I'm going to go back to my storage account. Go to networking. I'm going to select the private endpoint now. And you can see the blob storage endpoint has been created. If I click this, I could go to settings and select DNS configuration. And now you can see the IP address is 10.0.0.5. So I'm going to create another private endpoint for the file storage. I'm going to call this one mark storage 001 dash file dash PE for private endpoint. And I'm going to select file for the target sub-resource. For virtual network, I'm just going to make sure it's in the correct VNet and the correct subnet. And it's going to dynamically allocate the IP. And I'm going to leave all the rest of the settings as default. So now I'm going to go review and create, and everything passed. So I'm going to create, and it might take a minute or two to create the resource. I'm going to go to the resource, and I'm going to select DNS configuration, and you'll see the IP address is 10.0.0.6. So now I'm going to go to the blob storage. I'm going to hit refresh, and now you can see now it's accessing the data through the private endpoint. Same for the file. I'm going to hit refresh, and you can see it's accessing the data through the private endpoint now. So there's one more thing I could do. Well, if I select the storage account again, and I go to data storage, file shares, and I select the file share that I want, and I could select connect to the file share. So if I could select any drive I want. I'm just going to leave it as the default and show script. If I copy the script and I go to PowerShell, I'm going to click a new script and just paste the script. And now I'm going to, before I click run, I'm going to open up the Windows File Explorer. And you can see here, I have no file shares. So now I'm going to go back to PowerShell. I'm going to run that script that was produced by Azure. And now you see that storage file storage that got created. And you can see the files right here. I'm going to sign off the machine because I don't need the Windows machine anymore. So now I'm going to delete the resource groups. So I'm going to click the storage resource group, delete resource group, and apply force delete. and I just had a hiccup trying to delete my environment because I missed the error message. I'm gonna do that again. So the storage resource group is locked and can't be deleted. So to resolve this issue, I'm going to the storage account and there should be a lock somewhere. Under settings, there's locks. So I just have to delete this lock. And hopefully that's the only error I'm going to get for deleting this resource group. So I'm going to go back, delete the resource group. Going to try saying the delete process again. It says deleting here. I don't know if it hung up, but I did refresh the web page because it's taking forever. I think I've been waiting here for 4 or 5 minutes, just trying to delete the vault. I'm going to go to the resource and try to see if I could just delete it from here. And there's an error deleting the vault. Vault deleted validation failed. Vault delete operation will fail, and if all dependencies are not removed, please resolve the highlighted errors before proceeding further. So soft delete's enabled. Oh, and it just failed after about 15 minutes of 13, 14 minutes of running. The delete resource group, it just failed. So I'm gonna resolve this one. So I'm gonna go to backup items, Azure storage, and stop backing up. And I'm gonna choose stop backup level and delete the backup. for backup structure, I'm gonna unregister the storage account and enter the code for the reason I'm deleting it. And I missed this one. I'm going to disable soft delete. So I'm going to try to delete this again. So I just needed to click and activate on these ones. So now I'm going to try to delete this again and hopefully it'll work this time. And the resource group just got deleted. Now I'm going to delete the network watcher resource group. So all the resource groups have been deleted. So this concludes my presentation.